Is it any wonder that I shine when I'm around you? Bend the light that only you can see.
David Peterson, bassist, songwriter, singer, key player in Richmond's own Fighting Gravity band. Dave has been there since the beginning, shaping songs and presenting his craft to the fans with great precision and care. If you like the songs Mission Bells, Bend the Light, Jalula, Walk With Me, I Disagree, Home, and Breathing, that's just to name a few, then you're in the right place. Today we're going to discuss the song Bend the Light. It was written over 30 years ago. Bend the Light has not only been a crowd favorite, but a recent poll amongst his Fighting Gravity bandmates rated it as #1 of all-time favorite songs to play. Join us in welcoming the humble and talented Mr. Peterson as we do a deep dive into his song. I should probably just ask him the first question, right?
Well, first, let me say, I don't feel like anything more than 1/6 of the band. It is absolutely a group effort, and it's weird because when it's sort of like giving 6 guys a paintbrush and saying, "There's the canvas, go to it." It's an interesting idea to collaborate in the creative process like that. And I feel like one of the things that we did well was bring that sense of collaboration and that spirit of collaboration to the music. So it's kind of you to say, but I would have to take issue.
You did always let us breathe too, and because you would bring the shell of it with the lyrics and the melodies and pretty much a concept of it, but you let us play it with it and also become part of it, just like you just said. I think that's amazing.
Well, you in your own right are a phenomenal songwriter, and everybody has amazing gifts and talents that should be allowed to improve. The soup. We were lucky that in most cases the number of cooks in the kitchen actually made the soup taste better.
I guess you're right. Just in case you get the wrong person that you're playing with, it does clog, and you can kind of feel when you're with other like kind of songwriters. Yeah, I don't say it right, but let me ask you the first question. When did you come up with the idea? I kind of remember way back when, but I'm not gonna. You tell me, when was it originally?
It would be hard to say the year. I was thinking back. I'm sorry that I didn't come more prepared with the chronology or the history of this song and our music. It just has this very elastic the history of what we did and the way the music came out. Looking back, it was a while ago, and it feels like a lot of that occurred in like I said, a pretty elastic way. So I think it was early mid-90s.
That's what I'm thinking too.
That song came out, and I remember because I was living in Churchill in this place, this antebellum house. It was built in 1844, and a couple of my friends from Tech that were architects at the time, and they were in architecture school when I met them at Tech, and we were living there, and it had this really, really cool sort of wabi-sabi vibe to it. It was, again, it was well over 100 years old, and you could tell. So it was a great place to feel creative because there was it was kind of a, if the walls could talk kind of space, and they were creative people, and it really helped. And I think at that time, if I remember, I was listening to a lot of African stuff, a lot of Brazilian stuff.
I think Rhythm of the Saints was just out. The Paul Simon thing.
Yeah, which was just, I think his best record. One of my favorites. Between that and Graceland, it's hard to pick, but they were both certainly spinning, in my mind. And the rhythms that I was enjoying in the African music and the Brazilian music that I was listening to were becoming, a pretty big part of the music that I was interested in creating.
Yeah.
At the time.
And that's kind of too. We were starting to go more into a world beat kind of sound before we had superhero horns. Here's the fun sporadic, songs, and then all of a sudden, me as a horn player, I'm thinking I've got to write a horn line, but really it's an accompaniment throughout the whole thing. It's like all the pieces fit as a whole, as opposed to this shines and this shines, then this shines. And that was the first thing I realized about it. I was like, oh, wait, he doesn't need a horn line. He already has this stuff planned out. You know, it's pretty neat.
It was weird. I think that record, Forever Equals One Day, is transitional for us in that when we started out, again, it was such a collective, and the spirit of it was that everyone in the band deserves their place in this song. And so every song that we wrote, it was, you know, what do the horns do here in this song? What do the keyboards do here in this song? And as we evolved, it became more about, well, what does this song want? You know, what does it need? And I think that Forever Equals One Day era was where we started to look a little bit more at putting the art above the actual positioning of the parts.
Did you write it from the bass, or did it just pop in your head? Just curious.
Yeah, you know, that was
because bass writers. You know, I'm a big fan of Sting and the Police, and you know he was writing his songs from the bass. But
that was one of the only songs I've ever written strictly on the bass, and it started out with that the bass line in the chorus, and it just it seemed to want to move nicely under those lyrics, and then, you know, it's in E mixolydian, I think, so it's E's the fifth, and that brought that sort of C sharp D E pre-chorus.
It really opens up. You can do so much with the melody without making it too major or minor. It really did fit right over top.
It was that bass line in the verse, and then the bass line in the bridge that were kind of had been percolating for a while, and it seemed, I remember thinking, these could both be part of a song, and that's sort of how the whole thing.
Did you have that bridge part written when you know, like Carry Me Down to the Water, that whole section, or was that something I can't remember? It's been so long. I think it's like almost 30 years ago, or a little more than 30 years ago.
Well, what was the first part of the song? What first came to you?
It was the pre-chorus, really, that ascending from the C sharp to the D to the E, not to get the
Is It Any Wonder That I Shine When I'm Around You?
Yeah.
And so who is that? Who are we talking about?
It's a tough one. That was the original. The lyrics are about a friend of mine who he lost his life young. He was my best friend, and we were 18. We were the same age, and he was on a bridge. It was in Richmond, and the train bridge that used the really pretty one over the James. He and some friends were walking across it in the summer after our freshman year in college, and he was struck by a train.
Oh my God!
And he didn't survive. And that song was kind of the seeds of the lyrics were a requiem, if you will.
Did it all come out at once, or was it something that partially came out and then you had to go back and readjust? Or
that was pretty quick. They came out.
Isn't that weird how the best songs, literally, it's almost like you're grabbing them from somewhere else.
Yeah, you know, not to get too into that, like the song wrote itself trope, because they're generally more work than that. But
right.
It did seem to kind of it cooperated.
Yeah.
How long did it take to go from the first line to a finished product? Or till when you brought it to the band, I should say.
That was a couple of weeks, maybe.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was back when everybody had a Tascam 424 4-track that you could you could take any cassette. Mm-hmm. Our drug of choice was the TDK SA90, and because you could put 45 minutes on a side as opposed to a 60-minute cassette. So you put it in the little machine, and you could record 4 different tracks. And you could bounce tracks and just make it sound worse and worse if you wanted to. But that was pretty much the compositional tool at the time.
What did you bring to them?
I wish I could find it. It might be up in the attic somewhere. I feel like that one was pretty well articulated by the time it showed up in the rehearsal space.
I don't even remember listening to the 4-track to get the gestalt of the whole songs. It was more of like, I felt like you were entertaining and kind of talking with each band member as we went around the room. But I could be wrong. I have short-term memory problems or long-term memory problems. So.
I think that's not inaccurate. And again, I don't want to come across as, leading that. It was definitely very much like, here's the song.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what could make it.
You
better.
were a facilitator.
That's probably a decent word for it. But
when a song starts going off and going away from the original vibe, do you let people grow with it, or do you sometimes have to feel like you've got to pull it back? I know when I used to be younger, I was more of a tyrant when people would start to deviate, unlike you, who you let people breathe in it. But
that's a podcast unto itself.
Cool. I was just wondering. Do you remember when we played it live the first time? Because I remember different songs when we performed them live.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't recall.
And it was totally different. I remember when we were recording it, it was with John Alasia, and I forgot we were doing it, but that the whole rhythm track, the underlying loop, people don't know it's a loop.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really keeps the song kind of at that resonance where, in case all this stuff's going crazy, you've still got that groove to come back to. And it was a different type of groove too. When we transferred it over to live, it had a totally different feel than it did on the album. So
yeah, it was the groove. Again, it was one of those dinosaur analog drum machines that it sounds like a dinosaur analog drum machine, which some people go for these days. But the rhythmic foundation of it was something that we spent some time trying to figure out. And I think there was that bass line has a very kind of ostinato nature to it, and the goal was for it to be something that I don't know if trance-like is the right word, but had a sort of washing over you kind of feel.
Totally.
To it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I remember feelings a lot of times. I remember feeling like a badass, when we were playing that, because I was like, wow, this is a little different than some of the other stuff. And I think it was a big catalyst to go the world beat route that we went, and a little less from the ska origins that we had. So
well, I think it might have been part of the conversation we were having with each other musically that lent itself to that. It's a natural evolution. I think we were at an age that we were growing older and more mature, and perhaps a little more contemplative about things, and it felt right at the time.
It sure did.
When how long did it take, or how long was it from the first time you brought it to the band until it was live, when you played it live the first time?
I feel like that was back at a time too that we would really muscle through arrangements, and usually a 2 or 3 practice. And when we got on something, when we felt something was right, we got it figured out. I feel like pretty quickly. We didn't sit on a lot of stuff, and so it was probably like 2 or 3 rehearsals.
Really?
And then
you performed it. How did they react? How did the audience react? Did they take to it quickly?
I don't think so. It was different from what we were doing a lot of at the time, and in a live idiom, it's something that if it's not familiar and it doesn't have an American bandstand kind of groove to it, then it takes a while for people to be able to understand.
Yeah, because you went from the ska to this, and this was a transition. Like it was a those two, the Forever Equals One Day. That was like the first album that I remember growing up to, and that's what I knew you guys as. And then it was shortly thereafter, like, oh, of course they have a history, and
Right.
but so
Right.
that was my first initial, and it was so I'm guessing your the people your traditional audience was not expecting that, so that tracks.
Yeah, I don't know that we did that song live a whole lot before the record came out. And there were a number of songs on the record that were a departure from the not only the style of music that we had been known for, theretofore, but the moment that those songs were delivered in live. We were playing a lot of colleges, a lot of fraternity basements, and playing a song like that, playing a Requiem.
Yeah, they went quick and
right.
fun and energetic.
Yeah, it was one that I think we knew that the moment for it was yet to come. I think that record was embraced by local radio. It's a shame that there's not that vehicle
We talk about that a lot.
anymore.
Yeah.
For
Pandora is not local.
Yeah,
It's an algorithm.
there are any number of ways for one's music to reach the masses now, but there's just so much of it that I don't know how. I mean, the cream rises to the top. I think still there's just a lot of cream out there.
There really is.
There is, and there's a lot of ways for you to get your music out there. But how am I, as a listener, supposed to find that new music? And like my Fighting Gravity Pandora feed, I guess, if you my station, it changes, and I'm not sure why. There's a lot of reggae in it right now. I mean, I do know, but it's like this is my reggae on my other station, so I'm wondering if that has something to do with it, or is maybe Tree inserting it in there somehow because he's listening to the same music I do. But I do miss that whole B103.7 or Q94 thing from the 90s and the early 2000s, where if you were local, you could be a new band and you're going to get more airplay than a new band in another city. So I think that's missing, and I wish there was something that could be done about that.
No question.
When you first played that song to a live audience, and then up until the time it was recorded, did it change at all?
I don't know that we played it before it was recorded.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to.
Did we build it up
think.
from the bottom up, or did we actually? It had to be a build up because we put the rhythm in or the loop first, right?
Yeah, it was built from the demo, and it stayed fairly. It ended up being fairly one of those songs that ended up being very close to the way it was originally, I think, brought to the band. And I don't know. Yeah, a couple things were different. Like the intro part was a little bit more expansive than it ended up being on the record, and we were playing the intro. It was also back when we were being categorized as a jam band in a lot of circles, and our music was appearing alongside other bands that were in that category at the time, and it was something that the jazz roots of you and our drummer Mike Boyd and the band, there was a lot of improvisational mindset or a proclivity toward trying things live and seeing where they went.
I was amazed that sometimes I wouldn't even know where the band was going to go, and it would take off, and so you could tell some of the players are like, "Oh, it's going to happen," but the others are like, "Yeah, let's see where this goes." We always seem to play off each other so well. I mean, we didn't have our head in the music. We were actually looking amongst the people.
Yeah, luckily there weren't many. No one in the band was like, "That's not how this goes."
Right.
So and I know Mike, our drummer, was game. He was game for anything, which was nice live, and so that gave us the opportunity to sort of work to craft songs on stage before they ended up in the studio. This one, I think, though, we recorded it without having played it a whole lot.
Was it
live.
recorded live or was it in pieces?
We tracked it. I mean, the rhythm tracks went down together, and I think they stayed fair. There were some overdubs, some bass overdubs, and I think there were a couple tracks of bass on it. But by and large, the rhythm tracks remained fairly intact, and then we overdubbed.
How long was the process to record this one song? How long did it take, and how many? Was it like a 2-hour process, a 2-day process?
It was more a few hours. Back in that time, we weren't. It wasn't like
We were well versed. We were playing out so much, so it was easy for us to record.
It was,
Yeah.
and it was necessity because we didn't.
Cash
was expensive.
It's expensive.
What? This is an interesting question, and I don't know if it belongs here, but what was the quickest you ever recorded a song as a full band that made it onto a record? Like, was there like a one-take wonder or anything special?
Early
like that?
on, most of the stuff went down live. So, and there were maybe some vocal overdubs. We didn't. The first couple records were pretty well live, and then punch in or out if anybody shit the bed. But more or less, it was most of the stuff with live. And then as the music grew a little bit, it became desirable to spend some time thinking what else sonically might help make this work. Did that answer the question?
It did.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things you've ever said is people hear with their eyes. I know when we first started, we had a very small little light show. And going to your point, Bend the Light was one of those songs that live, people are going to have to lower their frequency, or not lower their frequencies, but just we were not being able to jump around and go crazy and stuff like that. And that's usually what made us kind of popular. You actually were forced to listen, and eventually, I think that was a big shaper of the band going more towards, like what you were saying, more of a jam band kind of thing. So it's amazing. You don't think about this stuff until you look back on it, and you're like, holy cow, that's why that was. This is why this was, and it helps you for your future endeavors or whatever. So I'm just going off on a tangent, but I love that phrase. I use it all the time. I tell everybody, people hear with their eyes. Did I say it like that? Yeah, hear with their eyes.
That's why you should never, if you're in a band, you should never go on until the sun goes down.
It's so true.
If you play during the day, it's hard to really make an impact. The thing about the words, not only of that song, but of what we were evolving to as a band, I think of a song like Sparrow, which has phenomenal lyrics. And, I think it's hard to achieve impact with music, with a song, without lyrics that either add tremendously to it or create some sort of sonic dissonance. Take the Smiths, who, you've got Johnny Marr's amazing, creative input by and large, and then Morrissey's morose lyrics over top of them, and you've got these jangly, bouncy, happy songs, and that are about, killing your girlfriend's dog,
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And what I always hoped for, right, in writing was having words that resonated in a way that were relatable.
They were universal too. You might say it's about your friend, but someone else might say it's about something else, and you allowed that to happen. You didn't pigeonhole people into, here's what you're going to think about this song. I was inspired. It helped me kind of shape the way I write things, because I was used to be very specific to a situation, but then it made me realize, wait, let's make this friendly for everybody at all times. So
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Sometimes you hit it, sometimes you don't. It's and I'm not the first to say it. It's all been said before. It's all been done before. So how do you say I love you in a way that people hear and go, huh, interesting way to put that?
Yeah.
Or how do you say I miss you in a way that people hear it? And
is there anything about it you'd want to re-record? Like, I think it would be kind of fun to put some of these songs that we're playing now on a contemporary platform. I don't know how you feel about that, because they are
think-
trapped in time.
I think it would be fun for us.
Right. Everybody else is used to the other.
That's what that whole idea. I don't know if you're familiar with the term "don't marry the roughs."
No.
And there is this idea when you go in and record a song, the producer will make a rough mix of it, and then from that rough mix, you take that home and sit with it for a while, and then think about what you would do to make it better in the final mix. So at the end of the recording session, you'll just throw all the parts down and listen to them and say, okay, and let's think about how this sounds, where this is going to go. And so the final mix usually is a polished version of the rough mix. But what can happen, and there's a period of time that goes between, that say you've finished tracking a song and then 2 or 3 weeks later you're going to mix it down. Well, you've got 3 weeks to listen to that song, and generally you want to listen to it a few times. Well, you start to get used to it, and you get to the point that when you come back in to do the final mix, you've become enamored, you become accustomed to the rough mix, such that your objectivity toward what would be a better version of it is sort of out the window.
Yeah.
I could see that happening. You're so proud of it. I did this, and it's
and we do that in life. I mean, I find myself saying, "Don't marry the rough," in a lot of ways over time, because you grow and it's the way we think about things. We grow accustomed to the way the way we judge people, the way we see the world. We get used to our version of it, and that is kind of marrying the rough in that way. And so the goal is to try to remain more objective toward what something is for what it is, and and for that reason, I'd love to go back in and redo all of our songs.
That was a question that we were going to ask.
But I don't know that anybody else would have as much fun with it as we did.
Re-record, would you change it? Would you just make a newer version of it? Would you change the words? What would you change if you're going to redo it?
Wow, that's a great question.
Because some people, it's locked in time and they don't want to change it.
Right.
And then, some artists will record something and then their thought on it changes. Like, I guess you don't marry the rough. So that's fascinating.
You divorce the rough.
Yeah, divorce the rough.
Yeah, so I don't. That'd be a tough question. There's a delta between what something was in your head and what it ends up sounding like, and I think that's true in any creative endeavor, whether it's a playwright who watches his monologue get performed on stage and think, that's an interpretation of how I saw it when I wrote it. So it's different, and there's a reconciliation that goes with any I think creative process as you go through it from the beginning to the end, that there are certain things about what you thought it would be that it's not, and those can kind of claw at you a little bit. But it's hard to once you get accustomed to something at the end of it, it's hard to look back. It's kind of like the difference. Do you ever do this when you go on vacation and you've never been someplace and you get there, and then like a day or two into it, you stop and go, how does this relate to the way I saw this was going to be, or how the vision I had of this place is so different than what the place is now that I'm here, that I find myself going back and comparing the dream with the reality. And so many times as the reality grows more real, you sort of forget the dream.
You become almost a new creation unto yourself. And I guess the song does too every time you play it, because it's live. Yeah.
That's the sense I don't think about many songs and there are a lot of songs that turned out way different than they started out seeming to be, or I maybe could say wanting them to be. But it's like, bringing a kid into the world. You have this vision of what your child's going to be and look like, and then when they show up, it's rarely that, but it's generally about 1,000,000 times better.
And a lot of our music came from speed. We were fast because we didn't have but so much cash flow.
Well, I never wrote on speed. I don't know about you.
I'll let you borrow some of my Adderall.
Maybe that would, I don't know if that would help. We were like, the songs were pretty fast at the beginning. I don't think we needed more speed.
Do you write from an intoxicated mind or from a mind that is very clear? Or do you find that your mood pulls down? How does the energy flow when you're actually in the process of creating? I am so fascinated with process now because I love performing. It's fun, but it's a lot of work. And I have forgotten why I enjoyed this. I mean, we used to sit and just come up with stuff all the time because we were in that. You know, we weren't going to be what we thought we were going to be in college. We were going to be musicians.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you should say that. I always found that part, the creative part and the process part of the art of it to be far more validating than performing it. However, there are moments in the performance of it, of a piece of music, where you feel a sense of communion with the audience that is hard to even describe, much less replicate anywhere else in your life. And those moments are really, and I think you can get somewhat desensitized to the value of what those moments actually are, because when in this song in particular, I remember, like, again, back to the local radio embracing this song in particular was one that they played quite a bit, and that did a decent job of helping us to the next level. And I remember live one night at the Flood Zone, we would do 2 shows, and it was the second show, and we were playing the song, and there was a young lady up front, and she just started crying, and I thought to myself, that's
worth the song.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
Yeah, my eyes watered up and got a little bit of chills there.
That's all of it. And when that kind of communication takes place in that way, it's pretty powerful.
We were so lucky to have like-minded people too. It wasn't somebody that's, oh yeah, I'm going to play with you guys, but then I'm going to go off and, become a teacher or this, that, and the other. We all really had one mindset. And I think that helped us so much because we were really a band of brothers. I mean, we all had idiosyncrasies, but overall, we would do anything for any of us.
Yeah, and that definitely. I don't think, and I don't think you can start something with. And this is not. I don't think this is what you're insinuating, but to tag on that, I don't think you can start something like what we did with the intention of it being successful and have it be successful. I think you have to come from a place where it's a more authentic expression of who you are and what you're trying to say. And if there are people who would like to listen to it, then great. that would even, and I guess that, what I was talking about, that live moment was when you get the work that you put in and the struggle that you endure to create pays off.
And on a technical side, it was it was a horn part, but it was always brass to your lips, and it was long phrasings and stuff. And then occasionally you had to be doing precise rhythmical things. By the end of the song, I had breathed so much and had used so much of my body that I literally was almost exhausted. That was one of my exhausting songs. Not that it was bad or anything like that, but it took a lot out of me because I wanted to try to get that thing across. I mean, it's such a simple horn line, but they fit perfectly. But that's just a side note. I would always feel exhausted after. If you hold the phrases out the way they should be. You know what I'm saying?
Some long notes.
Yeah.
That's the nice thing about not having to play a wind instrument.
Yeah.
Is my fingers didn't really get all that exhausted playing that song. Luckily.
Chris, you got anything else?
No, man. I appreciate you telling us about that. I'm glad you cleared up the story for me. I didn't realize what it was, but exactly. But It's
How many records is the song on?
I don't know, maybe 3 or 4,
Yeah.
something like that.
Is it studio? Just there was a live version, at least one, right? I'm
There's
ignorant of that.
a couple live versions
Okay.
and a couple studio versions.
Sweet.
Yeah. I think the original, again, I think that's the one that to me captured the essence of it the best.
I agree.
I've woken up to that song. It was either that and or Mission Bells came on my little alarm clock. I've told the story so many times to get ready to go to school, and that's what woke me. I just remember.
Really?
Yeah.
So is there a nervous tick that comes back anytime it
No,
shows up?
it's a terrific feeling. It's like, because I was, I think, 11th grade. I remember the bedroom. I remember where the clock was, and just waking up to this beat. And I don't remember which one it was because both of those songs kind of go hand in hand in my memory. And it's just, you wake up to such a beautiful song, and it was a great way to start the day.
Wow.
It casts the spell.
Those are the things that make you appreciate having done it.
And God knows, I wish
Glad you did.
I wish people could get up there and be in the band while we're playing it,
Okay.
because it does it buzzes your body. I mean, it's kind of neat to actually play the song that is in your head and you can feel it. It's different than being in the crowd, because when you're up there and it all surrounds you like that, I mean, that's giddy. That's one of those other things. Performing, that's what I really like too.
It's that part of it is intoxicating.
And you know it's happening because you start to feel all the body tingles and you feel your mind lifting up to a whole nother plane. And it sounds kooky, but it's real for me. So,
Yeah.
to
I think-
facilitate a good song, that you're allowed to, have these feelings, as opposed
Yeah.
to saying, you have to do this here, you have to do this here, you have to do this,
I've heard that described as transcendent,
Ah.
and I think that is probably a decent way to articulate what that feeling's like. And it's if it achieves that, it's pretty special.
Well, when is the next time we can hear this live?
This May 10th.
May 10th?
Yeah, May 10th, 2025. Outside at Browns Island in Richmond, Virginia.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Virginia Coalition, Pat McGee.
Yeah,
It's going to be a terrific show.
some great friends from a long way back.
Yeah.
We share a tremendous history with both of those bands, and they're fantastic guys and great musicians in their own right. It should be a fun night.
I'm going to get a massage this time.
Yeah,
The massage girl
those
backstage.
backstage massages are
What?
Underneath, we got
save that
we got
for-
to look out to the river and right under the trees. It was pretty hip.
yeah.
That's awesome.
It
Yeah,
was.
when the weather's nice, it's pretty.
Should
it's
do that
pretty
every
awesome.
show.
Yeah, it almost makes you not want to go on stage. It's like, I feel really good right now.
I feel really good.
Don't take any gummy bears.
Call in well.
No gummies, no, not for not for this guy.
No.
All right.
Thanks, Dave.
Pete, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.